We're going to talk about string and character processing. We use strings, we use words a lot in programming, and we often have to do a lot of manipulation and testing on those strings in order to accomplish certain tasks. So we're going to divide this, I think, probably 3 videos, maybe 4. We're going to start out by talking about the data types we're going to be looking at, characters and strings, and then we'll look at ways to test individual characters in a string, and then we'll look at ways to manipulate or change the contents of a string. For my demo, for you to follow along and do the project with me, I just did what I normally do in a lot of demos. I made a list box called list display, where I can display some results, and a go button called button go. Okay. So the first thing we need to talk about, we've talked about in Java, but I want to talk about it here, is the idea of a char, an individual character. So I'll declare a variable called myLetter that holds a char. Now a char is a letter or numeral or punctuation, just like the contents of a string might contain, but it can only contain one at a time. A literal char is enclosed in single quotes. Okay, so if I declare and set a value like this, I use single quotes around the letter that I want to assign to this variable name. Okay, if I use double quotes, I might have a problem. It's underlined. I can't convert type string to char. Okay, so you need to use single quotes when you're doing a char. Double quotes go around a string. Okay, so if I want to do a string, my string, excuse me, and I can use G that way. If I try to use single quotes here, what do you think will happen? It's not compatible. So if I wanted to do this, I could do, char has a toString method. So I could do .toString here. Even with a hard-coded value like this, with a literal, I can still put .toString after it and it will convert it to a string. And we've used toString many times. So I can assign it to a string, but without it as a char, it can't be assigned to a string variable. Okay, only a string can be assigned to a string variable, and only a char literal with single quotes can be assigned to a char variable. So that's important to remember. I can also do this. If I try to do myLetter here, I have a problem, but I can do myLetter, which is a char, but I can call its .toString method to convert it to a string if I want to assign. So you've seen me do it with char, with a literal and do .toString, and now you see me do it with a variable, call its .toString method so that I can assign it to a string. So let's create another string here. I am going to create a string called my name equals, put Geiger in here. That way we got some punctuation as well. Now we can retrieve individual letters out of a string, because we can treat this string just like it was an array or just like it was a list. And we can access individual chars, individual characters from our string using an index number. Okay, and since I can do that, I can process a string just like I would process an array, or just like I would process a list using a loop. So let's create a for loop here. For int I equals 0, So that's our index variable that we're going to use to go through the different elements of our string. Okay. While the index is less than my name dot length. Okay, so there's a length property that goes with a string, just like there's a length property with an array. Okay, so there's our condition. Index. I didn't call it index. I just called it I. Well, I is less than my name dot length, and we're going to increase I by 1 at each iteration. All right, so there's our for loop. And let's do message box dot show, and let's do my name sub I. Yeah, and I spelled it wrong. Okay. Okay, now we have an issue here. My name sub I is getting an individual character. It's getting an individual char. So we have to do it, and messagebox.show requires a string to be provided to it. So I need to convert this to a string. So let's run this. It's going to loop through each letter, and it's going to pull out the letter item 0. Then it will pull out the character at item 1, then the character at index 2, then the character at index 3. And let's run it and see what happens. So here we go. I hit go. There's the M. There's the R. There's the period. There's the space. The space counts as a char too. There's G, E, and it goes through my name one letter at a time as it loops through. So we can pull individual letters, individual chars out of our string using their index numbers. One thing that we cannot do though, let's go down here and I will say my name. Let me change, I would like to change Geiger and change the E to a capital E. I don't know why I want to do that. So that is item 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my name's 5 equal, and I want to set that to be capital E. Okay. And I get an error. It says property or index cannot be assigned. It is read only. So that's one thing that's different about processing a string with a loop like we would an array or a list is when we do that, the string is read only. Okay, so we can't go out and assign, like we could in a list or array, we can't assign an individual value to a particular element of a string. We can process the string and read its letters, read its characters one at a time, but we cannot change or update individual characters using the index numbers using this method. All right, so I'm going to go through in the next video and I'm going to talk about different ways to test characters within a string.